Okay, so let's be real. Are you an IB student who feels like you're stuck on a hamster wheel? You do past paper after past paper, but your scores, they just don't seem to budge. It's super frustrating. I get it. But what if I told you the problem isn't how many papers you're doing, but what you do after you put the pen down? Let's get into it. This right here, this is the secret sauce. Seriously, the students pulling in the top scores aren't just working harder, they're working smarter. They have a system. They don't just glance at the answer key. They get inside the examiner's head. And that is exactly what we're going to break down today. I want you to look at this number, 70%. That is how much of a past paper's value comes from marking it the right way. That means actually doing the paper is only like 30% of the job. And why is that? Well, because doing the paper shows you what you got wrong, but proper marking, that shows you why you got it wrong, and most importantly, how to never make that mistake again. So to unlock that massive 70%, we've got to get comfortable with our main tool, the IB mark scheme. And trust me, it is not just an answer key. It's more like a blueprint for how to get points, and it has its own language, its own rules that you need to learn to speak fluently. Okay, so the first thing you'll see are what we call marking points, or MPs. Think of these as individual items on an examiner's checklist. For each point you hit, you get a mark. Now, sometimes they're independent, so you can get mark number 2 even if you miss number 1, but other times you got to get MP1 right before you can even be considered for MP2. All right, listen up, because this next rule is an absolute lifesaver. It's called the own figure rule, or sometimes error carried forward. Here's what it means. If you mess up part A of a question, you should never, ever leave part B blank. Why? Because if you take your wrong answer and use the correct method in part B, you can still get all the method marks. So the big takeaway here is always try the next part. Always. The mark scheme is also built around these things called command terms. Basically, the first word of the question is telling you exactly what kind of answer to write. If it says state, you just need one quick fact for 1 mark. Easy. But if it says explain, you got to dig deeper and give the reasons why something is happening. That's worth more marks. And if you see evaluate, whoa, that's asking for pros, cons, and a final conclusion. Knowing this stops you from writing a 5-page essay for a 1-mark question. Okay, so now that we're speaking the examiner's language, let's put it all together into a system. This brings us to part 2, a 5-step method that will help you squeeze every last drop of value out of your past papers. So here's the game plan. It's 5 simple steps. 1, mark it blind. 2, be super strict with the mark scheme. 3, categorize every single mark you lose. 4, study the perfect answers. And 5, track your patterns. We're going to zoom in on the most important ones now. Step 2 is really where this all clicks, but it takes a different mindset. You have to be absolutely ruthless with yourself. No more, oh, but I knew what I meant. Doesn't matter. If your answer, word for word, doesn't match what the mark scheme is looking for, you do not give yourself the point, period. Remember, the examiner can't read your mind. They can only read your paper. And being this strict helps you avoid all the classic traps. You know, like writing it increases when the mark scheme wanted it increases because of this reason. That's a lost mark. Or forgetting the units on a number, or giving a brilliant answer to a question that wasn't actually asked. You have to be tough on yourself now, so the examiner doesn't have to be on exam day. Next up, step 3. You have to categorize every single lost mark. Was it because you just didn't know the content? Or was it a silly mistake, a careless error? Maybe you ran out of time. This isn't about making you feel bad. It's about being a detective. By figuring out the type of mistake, you can create a specific plan to fix it, just like you see here. Now this brings us to what might be the single most powerful step in this entire process. For every question you got wrong, don't just look at the right answer and nod. No, I want you to physically write out the perfect full mark answer. By doing this, you are literally programming your brain, training it to automatically produce the kind of phrasing and structure the IB loves. All right, these core ideas work for every subject, but the way you apply them can change a little bit. So let's do a quick-fire round of tips for some of the major IB subject groups. For you, science folks, biology, chemistry, physics, the devil is in the details. You have to be obsessive. Are your significant figures correct? In a chemistry mechanism, did you know that each arrow can be worth a mark? And for data questions, you often get 1 mark for reading the graph, a second for stating the trend, and a third for explaining the science. Don't leave those points on the table. In math, you'll see these letters M and A. M stands for method. You can actually get these marks even if you make a small calculation mistake. A is for the final answer, and you usually need to have the method right to get it. And let me say it again. Those follow-through marks we talked about, they are your absolute best friend in a math exam. For those of you in the humanities, like history or global politics, things are a little different. You're not just collecting individual points. Your essays are marked against level descriptors. To get into that top band, you need sharp analysis and a look at different perspectives. And remember this, a deep, thoughtful analysis of 2 or 3 examples is way, way better than just listing off 10 facts. So when you put this all together, you realize this process isn't just about getting a better score on your next practice paper, it's about a fundamental shift in how you see the exam. You stop being just a student who takes a test, and you start becoming a strategist who truly understands how the game is played.
But look, knowing a system is one thing. Actually doing it, paper after paper, is another. So how do you make this whole thing feel less like a chore and more like a natural habit?
Here it is. This is the ultimate hack to develop that examiner mindset. After you've marked a few papers this way, flip the script. Start doing it before you even write your answer. As you read a question, ask yourself, okay, what are the 2 or 3 marking points they're probably looking for here? And then you build your answer specifically to hit those points. This little mental trick is a total game changer.
So I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about tonight. The next time you sit down to study, ask yourself, are you just doing papers, or are you actually learning from them? Because the difference between those 2 words, well, that's the difference between the score you have now and the score you're truly capable of.